So welcome to the session, tired of connecting on-premises and cloud data. And this is about the stretch database. How many of you tried SQL 2016? Most of you. How many of you tried stretch database? Few. That's good. So did you try in release candidate or the CDP versions? The latest one was the RC. But we have the full version now. Few slides to start with before we start our technical things. So please silence your cell phones. And these are the offers that we have from PaaS. How many of you know that we have these many features from PaaS itself, like SQL Saturdays, 24 hours of PaaS, Business Analytics Conference? I hope most of you are making use of it, right? I myself have delivered sessions about at least a dozen in this year for SQL Saturdays. Okay, so if you have not made use of any of these ones, I would advise and suggest you to go and get yourself registered for your local SQL Saturdays and also for PaaS chapters. And in today's keynote, we heard that they're going to have 24 hours PaaS for more than 5 or 6 other languages. That's a very great news throughout the world, actually. Session evaluations, you have 3 options. Either you can go to paassummit.com, or you can download the app, or you can use the following, the QR code that you can find it in the entrance of every single rooms, actually. To introduce myself, I'm Dr.Subramani Paramasivam, in short Manny. I'm an MVP and a Microsoft trainer. I've been working with SQL Server since 1998. I started my career as a trainer, and here I am. I'm also a frequent speaker on SQL Beats, SQL Saturdays, SQL Server Geek Summit, Inside SQL Summit, data awareness programs, and various other events and programs around the world. For our today's session, this is our agenda. So what we're going to do today is to see the feature on SQL Server 2016 with the stretch database concepts. The best features that we have in 2016, stretch database is also one among them. So we're going to see some benefits and features, issues and caveats with that, and also we're going to see how we are going to stretch, enable it, and also pause, disable, and drop the databases. And we're going to see the pricing behind the scenes, and also backup and restore, and how do we monitor once we have enabled the stretch database. I'm not going to present just on my own. I have some assistants with me. So the first assistant is here for us. So he's going to help us and give us some tips on and off. So I don't want to keep you bored, and I want to make sure that you're awake after the lunch session, what we have now. Before we start, I'd like to give you quick information about cold, warm, and hot data. So how many of you are aware of this concept? Most of you, right? So just to give you a quick brief, imagine we are in the month of December, and whatever happens right now, current day, current week, current month, current quarter, it's all hot data. It happens, right? And the cold data, imagine going back to January. So this data doesn't change at all or infrequently accessed. As you can see, the month December data is heavily accessed, and January it is less accessed, and also frequently changing in December and infrequently changing in January. In between this hot and cold, we have the warm data. But for our concept, we're not going to talk about warm, but we're going to talk about cold as well as hot data. Now, imagine we have 1 million of records, of which 200,000 records is hot data and 800,000 is cold data. Keep this in your mind. I'm going to come back to this again. So this is the definition and architecture of how a stretch database would work. Here we have 3 entities. So number 1 is your local database in your local instance. Number 2 is in Azure, and that is the database that you're going to stretch to the cloud in Azure. Number 3 is your applications. It could be your reporting services, it could be your third-party applications, whatever you build that is accessing your database. So in here, what you see exactly is what you see. There is a direct connection between your application to your local database. Once you have created the stretch database and your data has been moved to the cloud, you don't have to make any changes to your application. No, you don't have to let any of your users to know that you have to change your queries pointing to the stretch database that is in the cloud. They don't need to know. All the references are created behind the scenes just by enabling the stretch database for your specific table. As you can see the arrow marks, number 3 does not go to number 2 directly. Number 3 goes to number 1, and 1 knows where the data is residing, whether it is local data or whether it is remote data, and it renders accordingly. To give you much more explanation on how you can exactly understand is, how many of you are aware of linked server concept? Great, so most of you know the linked server. So we know here we have server A, one instance, and we have server B, another instance, and you have two databases A and B. So you can create a linked server between one instance to another instance. So you can write a simple T-SQL query with 4-point query, and then you can write your joins, you can access your data, as easy as that. How do you do it? You would do it by creating a linked server in your local instance. Imagine instead of linked server in another instance, if that server resides in the cloud. This is how you're trying to find a nearest explanation of how the stretched database would work. We have some relations to that one. This is a screenshot of what you have seen so far. And you can simply right-click on your linked server, which is under server objects. That's not within database, that's within the instance. And you can configure your linked server name, security, server options in your new linked server concepts. And you also have providers beneath your linked servers. Now, on the other hand, this is a screenshot that I've taken from SQL 2016, where you have a list of databases and you have the configured stretch database within the database, not within the instance. You can see the comparison between the left screen and the right screen. And in the right, the red highlighted area is the external data sources. So that is auto-created when you enable the stretch database. And you have the provider SQL NCLI11. This is the provider that is used in the link server, and this provider is configured, is actually used to configure for your stretch database. And this is how stretch database works fantastically. And you don't need to create access, security, whatever it is. The local table, whoever has got access to that table, they access it very easily. Now, we're going to see some benefits and features of using this stretch database. Like I said earlier, you don't need any changes to be made to your local application or to reporting services to point to the table. It's as simple as that. And you don't need to let your users know, hey, I've stretched the database and now it is in the remote. So if you want to access, you need to get some special privileges for that one. Nope, nothing. They're going to simply say select star from the table A, which has been stretched. If the data, let's say, if anything prior to 2013, they want to see the data, that comes from the remote automatically. And any of the data from 2014, 15, 16, that's going to come from your local data. And it's going to save money on your storage accounts. How many of you are having SAN architecture or SAN environment in your workplace, right? So imagine you have millions of records. I'm only giving a scenario example. You have to expand your SAN architecture by adding more storage devices to fit the growing databases, all the cold data. What happens behind the scenes? The DBA are going to be in a hard part. They have to take backup of every single database that resides locally. It's the deep backup they're going to take. And also imagine to restore that, how hard it is. Are they going to meet the SLAs? It's another question. But with this, any data that is being moved to remote, you're only going to take a backup of the data that resides locally. So instead of 1 million records, you would take only 200,000 records that resides locally. How quick that is going to be? A full backup, differential backup, and log backups, imagine the size of it. Imagine the frequency. Imagine the size of that, and you have to take tape backups, and also you have to send that across to various locations. If you go in a restore, you have to raise it across. Restored point of million of data compared to just 200,000 records is going to be much more quicker, right? So we're going to meet improved SLA performance. Then it's very easy to maintain your data because you're only going to deal with the local 200,000 records. Apart from that, we're also going to deal with few scenarios. I'm going to make it much more humorous in coming slides, so please bear with me until you know the basics of this stretch database concept. We also talk about local, eligible, remote, and stage. So whatever data that resides in your local database system is local. Of that local, if you identify any data that is eligible to be stretched, then that is eligible data. Once you have identified the eligible data, once you move the data to the Azure, then that becomes a remote data. But before moving to the remote, the eligible data takes a copy of it, puts into a stage data in your local system again. And it has got minimum of 8 hours storage of that stage data. You have system stored procedures to extend the duration. And you also have extended events. You can take backup and restore for your same instance and also for different instances. I have the demos for you to easily see that. You can also update and delete once you have moved the data to the cloud. And we have already seen the external data sources and providers from the previous screenshots that I was showing you on the link servers. You can also set up alerts, and you have special extended stored procedures that comes out of the box from SQL 2016 onwards. We have simple issues and caveats. What are the issues and caveats? If you have any column types that has got column set and computed column that is not eligible for stretch. I have only simple 3 columns here. One is a limitation, the other one is before enabling stretch, and the other one is after enabling the stretch. If you have any table that has got these data types like text, end text, images, timestamp, then those tables are not eligible for your stretch. DML operations, I'll come back to that later. Indexes, if you have any of these indexes in your table, then again, that is not eligible for stretch. And also, if you have check constraint, foreign key constraints, that is again not eligible for your stretch. If at all you have more than 1023 columns, how many of you have been in that scenario? 1. Oh, that's great. I'll talk to you later on that one. Any one of you having more than 998 indexes? You, again. Again, I'm going to have a serious chat with you. Okay, so if you have that table, then you can't enable that. Again, once you have enabled the stretch, you can't have a unique and primary key constraint to the local database, and also you can't create any indexing on views with filtered indexes. With the DML operations, you can't update, insert, and delete any data once you have moved to the remote data. But here comes my assistant to say, if you have a DB owner permission, you can insert, update, and delete in your remote table. He also says it may be an option for you to take a photo if you need. Then, extended stored procedures. Sorry, go on. Constraints. If you have any constraints,
if on that table we have primary key or unique constraint, we cannot stretch the database.
No, after stretch, you cannot create a constraint on it. That's on the 3rd column. So I'm going to get you a new screenshot which you can't find this anywhere else, because based on my understanding with stretch database, which I have encountered with last 1 year with all the CTP releases and RC, this is my understanding. So basically, like I said, I have local data, and we also identify the eligible data. Once we have stretched the data, first the eligible data is moved to stage. Like I said earlier, by default, it keeps the data in the stage for 8 hours. But you can use the stored procedure SP RDA, remote data archive RPO duration procedure, to extend the number of hours for the stage data. Then this stage data is then moved to remote, and if you have any reconciling problem with the batches, then you can use this system stored procedure to reconcile the batch. If any user who wants to access the local table or the eligible table, whatever resides in the local, you can set up a query mode, and you can make a restrictions to them. So this query mode, you can say a user is going to access the local table. You can say him whether he can access only local data, or he can use both local and remote, or he cannot access any data at all. So you can set that option with these ones. Then at any time, if a user wants to test if the stretch database has been configured, then you can test it with RDA test connection system stored procedure. Once you have your local database has been stretched, and if you have created any new indexes and new columns, you can again reconcile it with this reconcile system stored procedures. Most of the times it reconciles automatically, but if it does not, you can manually do it. At last, if you have a database stretched, and for some reasons you want to stretch that data to some other instance of the database, you can deauthorize, and again you can reauthorize. I have some demos for you to see on that one, so we can see it. So that's again a, sorry, go on.
What happens if you have either always-on groups where you have readable secondaries or you've replicated data? Can those replicas read from that Azure store?
If that replica data resides in your local system, in your local table, and if that does not fall into any sort of constraints, and if that is eligible, if that can be moved.
Different question. I'm trying to say, can we replicate we use always on groups if we have stretched the table.
No, that's a different concept. That's totally different concept. Okay, but you will know more about it once I get into the demo sessions. Sorry, go on.
I just want to be clear. So you have this local data, and you have local only, and you have eligible data that's still local, but has been marked to be moved, yes?
Yes.
When you say local only, you only get to read what is actually local and not marked eligible? Are you restricting them?
No, that's not a restriction. So it is not a mandatory thing that you have to move all the eligible data to remote. We only identify if the data is eligible or not. But it's up to you to move it or not. Did I answer your question, or what was your question?
Oh, it's not automatic? You don't tell it what the criteria is to move it, it just moves it?
No, you can make it automatic to say, like, for example, if I want to move any data before 2006, you can set the criteria on it, and based on the data, data movements in your cold data, it moves automatically to the cloud.
Right. So eligible just means it's scheduled to be moved, it just hasn't been moved. Is that correct?
No, not exactly, but that is also one of the answers. Eligible data is a data that can be scheduled to move, can be moved. It's not you must move. Yep. I can answer you more after the sessions, right? Right. Next, I have cold data and hot data. Cold data is in blue, hot data is in red. Now, we have to move this cold data to remote. How do we do that? So now my assistant is going to call the so-called DBA, Mr. Fantastic, to stretch the database. And here is my second assistant, who's going to help us. There's only a humor part. So what he's up to, he's going to help us stretch the database to cloud using SQL Server 2016. And he can also help us, once you disable the stretch, you have two options. Either you can leave the data in the cloud, or you can bring the data back to your local system. So you have these two options. Now, how do we do it? So you have on-premises data, cold and hot, plus you have the cloud data. First, you have to identify the eligible data. Then you're going to stretch it. How easy it is? It is that easy. But that's only a picture, but I'm going to show you the screens on how it's going to happen. To identify, which is part one, we're going to use Data Migration Assistant. This is a new replacement tool for SQL Server Upgrade Advisor Preview 1.4. So before that, we had that within Blade format, but right now we have this Data Migration Assistant. And with this, you can list all the eligible tables for the chosen database. So you don't need to know which table has got the constraint, which table has got these particular number of indexes, or these more than 1,023 columns. But this Data Migration Assistant will help you to learn more on what are the eligible data from the given database. I'm going to show the demo after the next slide, because this is the second part of enabling the stretch. To enable the stretch, how easy it is, you just go to right-click the database, and then simply say go to task, stretch, and enable. This is for the database level. For the table level, you can right-click on table and simply say stretch and enable, as simple as that. Or you can also use SQL scripts. Execute sp configure, and you can do this. We're going to see a quick demo on how to do a data migration assistant to identify the tables, identify the eligible data, and we're going to create a quick stretch. Sorry, go on.
So it has to be stretched to the cloud, or it can be stretched to another server also?
It has to be stretched to Microsoft Azure Cloud, because you'll see the screens what you're asking for actually. So that's the data migration assistant. It says we have a new version of 2.0, but I don't want to do it right now, so I'm going to cancel it. All I'm going to do is create a new assessment. I'm going to name it Pass Summit. And it's a SQL Server. I'm going to create it. By default, it's going to check the compatibility issues and also new feature recommendation, which is what I'm going to do here. Click on Next. Next is my server name. My server name is my local instance, so I just copy and paste, connect. Now I have option to choose the databases. Here I have AdventureWorks DW. I check that and click on Add and say next. So now it's assessing the database to see not just for stretch enabling thing, but it is also going to give you some other suggestions on what you have asked for exactly. This won't take a while. While that's running, I'm going to open the okay, so this is done. So it says compatibility 130, which is 0, no compatibility issues. Feature recommendations, no performance issues. Security wise, you have some issues, which we are not worried about. And in storage wise, you have medium stretch database. So let me expand this. As you can see, I'm going to click on the dim database log, and here you can see the status: the table cannot be part of a stretch database because column XML event in the table is of type XML. So it's going to see the structure, it's going to read the schema, and it's going to advise you whether it can make it or not. Most of the dim tables here will fail. That is because it has got the constraints on it. Let's go to fact tables here. So fact call center, it does not show any error on it, but that's good. Fact internet sales, here it says this is having column sales order number and sales order line number. It has got a foreign key constraint on it. So for that reason, this is not eligible for stretch. And this is eligible for stretch. So this is how you would do it. You can export the report, and you can export it to a name location or however you want it. So this is how you can identify what are the tables that can be eligible. Once that is done, what we're going to do is we're going to enable the stretch. I'm going to check what are the databases I have so far. Okay, so I have not created the database yet. What I'm going to do here, let me maximize that a bit. I'm going to check and recreate if the database exists. And once I've created, I'm going to create a master key encryption with a very strong password. And once I've created, I'm making sure the password what I've created, the symmetric keys does exist or not for the database master key. Yes, it exists. Now for our scenario, like we said about hot data and cold data earlier, I'm going to create a new hot data table, and I'm going to insert some data into it. So basically what I've done, in AdventureWorks DW, I've taken fact reseller sales and I named it as fact reseller sales hot, and I've taken data of 2005 September and 2005 October, only 2 months of data. Now, since we named it as hot, I'm going to manipulate the data to say if it is 2005 September, make it to 2016 September, which is a month ago, and if anything to do with 2015 October, then make it to 2016 October. So as simple as that. Now we have our hot data ready. Then I'm going to create a cold data. So for cold data, I'm not going to manipulate. All I'm going to do is simply get the data, and I can see I have 2005 records. And my restrictions here is anything prior to 3 or 4 more years. Now I'm going to see how many data I have in my, what is that data? Hot data. So in hot data, I have for September 593, and for October, I have 493 records. Sorry, 499. And now I'm going to find a union both all. As part of SQL 2016 feature, we also have a live query statistics. So I'm going to enable that and execute it. And here you can see a live statistics while the query is running. So you have seen these operators coming through. But when the stretch is enabled, you can see a new operator coming out, so which I'll show you later once I have enabled the stretch. Now this is the time for us to enable the stretch. So the new database what I've created is here. Let me see the tables that are available. So we have the cold and hot data. I have options, task, stretch, and simply say enable. Or I can go to the direct table, right click on the table and say stretch and enable. So you have 2 options. Next, I'm having option to choose whether I want to move all the data in the table or only certain data. So I have 2 examples, but as far as this example, I'm going to move everything in this data, which is we have 5 records. So I'm going to move it. Before moving in, I'm going to sign into my Azure. To answer for your question, someone who asked here, like, you can only move to the Azure cloud. So here, when you enable the stretch database, you have option to log into the Azure database.
So in this case, if you can select column, can you exclude those columns like that is not compliant, like
Mm-hmm.
from the table, so you can like stretch that table.
Yes, you have to strip that out. So you have to manually rebuild the table that is eligible for stretch. Is that what you asked?
My question is, in my base table, we have some columns that are not compliant.
In that case, you can't do the table at all. That table will not be eligible for stretch at all. Even if it is one column does have XML, if you don't want to do it, but the stretch moves all of the columns. You can't say you have to move only certain columns on it. But you can create a filter predicate to say, if you want to move all of these columns, all of this data, you can say between this date to that date, that is possible with the filter prediction.
Is there also a way only to stretch certain partitions, for example?
Sorry, come again?
Is there also a way to only stretch certain partitions, for example?
You can do that, but if you have the partition column as part of your existing table, you can do it. I'm logging to my Azure account. While that's loading, I'm also going to load my portal.azure.com. All right, so now as part of my subscriptions, I have two subscriptions. One is MSDN, the other one is the Microsoft Partner Network. So I'm going to choose the MSDN. And here you have all the available Azure regions. So here I'm going to choose West US. I'm going to see if I have any existing servers. I don't have any existing servers. I'm going to create a brand new one. This is going to be your SQL admin login username. So don't forget that. And when I created, you remember, I gave encryption key, master encryption key, and that password I have to provide here. That was a strong password. When I created the database, I created a symmetric key thing here. And here is a place where you have to choose like SQL Server IP, which detects automatically, or you can give the range. So to do that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to simply ask for what is my IP address.com. And it says 24.75.239.1. So I have option to say 24.75.239.0 to 24.75.239.255. So which means I'm allowing anything that comes within this IP range as part of my firewall settings. But I'm going to choose simply use my SQL Server's public IP address. And here is a summary of what is going to happen. As you can see, the estimated pricing is 61 USD per terabyte of data per month and $1825 USD per month. So you have your data rates and also your storage things, and this is default to whatever you're going to choose. But you can, this is for your DSU 100, which is data stretch unit. I'll show you once things are configured. And now I'm going to click on finish. Right now what it is doing is it's provisioning the database server, and then it's going to create the firewall routes, and it's going to create the database scoped credentials. This is going to take, sorry. The pricing is default. So whatever you're going to stretch, no matter whatever you stretch, that screen is going to show you the same amount, all right? Because that's going to say that's a minimal amount to start with. But based on your data usage and based on your data stretch units of how much you're accessing, and based on that, the amount go up or down. I have a pricing section as well, so I'll cover that in that time. Yeah. So while I was talking, it took about less than 30 seconds. The other two is going to take about at least 2.5 minutes in the public Wi-Fi connection. So I'm going to leave that as is. I'll go to the slides. I'll come back again when we hit to the next level. So this is how you simply enable a stretch. But I'll show you. Yeah, go on. Sorry, your question was the public IP address has to be the same?
Does it have to be a public IP address?
And it's not a public IP address, but it chooses the IP address based on your connection as of now.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
But if once I've configured, once I'm back to London, if I'm going to access with my local Wi-Fi, that's not going to allow me to work with the database. In that case, I can log into my portal azure.com. I can go to configure section on that particular stretch server. I can say, apart from that IP address range, I love this IP address range as well. So you can set the rules on that place.
That's where the second part would come in.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so we'll again join the demo back after a few slides here. This is a simple T-SQL scripts, what you can use to pause, resume, and disable, and also you can drop it. But like I said earlier, even though if you drop your database from the stretch, you have two options at the time, either leave the data in the cloud or bring the data back to the Azure. But doing this will not drop the stretched database on the stretch server that is already been created. You have to go to portal.azure.com and you have to manually delete it if you want that to be deleted. Okay? And this is the part where we have the stretch DB pricing. By default, when you enable a stretch database, it creates DSU 100 with price per hour of $2.50 per hour. And you can stretch up to 6,000, and this is based on different regions. But as of now, like whatever I created, at times it can show you only up to DSU 2,000. And my demo to you is going to be on DSU 100. If at all you want me to show DSU 6,000, that's my account number 1223333. You can transfer each one of you, then I can show you DSU 6,000 and that demo, but that's only, I'm only kidding there. You can set up your billing alerts. So basically what happens is like, if you have crossed your threshold, if your stretch database units, storage, transfer rates is really going beyond your schedule, you can set up an alert to say, stop it by this time if it goes beyond my actual pricing, what you're setting. So you can set up the alerts on that. And, sorry, go on.
But will you still be paying for the storage?
You will be still paying for your storage, yes. Okay, some more concept on the pricing side. You can stretch up to 240 terabytes of database. And for data storage, you're going to pay $0.16 per GB per month. If at all you want an optional geo-renderal backup, then you need to pay $0.12 per GB per month. And this stretch database is available for you with 99.99% uptime. Plus, if at all you need some additional plans for you to support, you have developer plans starting with $29 per month. For standard, it is $300. For professional direct, it's $1,000. And for premier, you need to contract Microsoft support. Then, bigger DSU in 1 hour. What does it mean? For example, I told you, you have DSU 100 by default. You have used that for the first 55 minutes. And for some reasons, you want to make it to be much more faster, and you're going to stretch that to DSU 100 to DSU 300. And in the last 5 minutes, you used DSU 300. Okay? Now, how much will be charged? For 55 minutes or for the last 5 minutes? For the last 5 minutes. The maximum stretch that you used within that hour will be charged. So you can't expect, even if it is a minute, that's still going to be charged there. And when you move this plan, it is up and running for you within minutes. And you can unstretch it. Again, when you unstretch any data movements, that is also still charged. For data transfer rates, anything less than 5 GB, it is free. But anything above 5 GB until 350 terabytes, the charges are 0.087 to 0.16 per GB. That will be your pricing on that. Next, let's jump on to backup and restore. We have the shallow backup. So when we say shallow backup, a table has got 200,000 records in your local and 800,000 records in the cloud. When you take a backup, you don't take a backup of 200 plus 800. You're taking backup of only 200,000 that resides in local. So that's a shallow backup, only a part of it. Now, in the cloud, what happens to your backup? Microsoft takes the backups automatically for you. And it takes every 8 hours, and it also creates snapshots for all your databases. And it retains each snapshots for 7 days. And you can increase it based on your support cycle. And geo-redundant backup is also available as part of your Azure storage. Now, there are also other options. Once you have stretched and you have taken a backup, you have restored for that. In the same instance, in the same database, you have no problem. You can continue accessing the data in remote as well as in local. In case, if you're enabling a new database in your local system, in your local instance or in a different instance, you need to deauthorize and reauthorize the database. That scenario is as simple as this. Imagine you have a local database, and that is called LDBA, and you have a stretched database in the cloud called SDBA. Now I'm going to create a copy of LDBA to LDBA-B. Okay? Now if I have to disconnect this connection and I want to connect the connection between LDB-B, all I have to do is simply run sprda deauthorize the DB. What it is going to do is it's going to disconnect the connection of stretching. If you make any more changes to your local database in A, it does not affect, but the link will be still there, but there won't be any effect, data won't be affected. Then you have to run sprda reauthorize DB for that particular instance after taking your snapshot. Then you're going to get a connection to the same database server. This applies to the same rule for a different scenario as well. Like if at all you have a new backup database in your cloud, that will be the same scenario. But this is a very simple scenario for you to understand how you can reauthorize and deauthorize it. So this is the extended events that comes by default, and you can see from management you have these sessions, and you can see a stretched database health which is created by default once you have enabled it. And how do we monitor the stretch? As simple as that. Whatever database that you have stretched, you can simply right click on database, stretch, and then go to monitor. You can see this screen which says what are the tables that have been stretched, what is the status of the migration, whether it is outbound or post, then how many data that are eligible and how many local rows, and what's the rows in Azure. It also gives you information on what is your stretch server and what is your service tier and your region. So in this case I have in West Europe. But that's an out of the box. But for this demo, I've given you something special. What I've done is I have accessed the databases tables that resides locally, and I have created a customized Power BI dashboard. And that looks like something like this. You can make it much more useful. I made these changes in last Monday. So you can make it much more classical look, or however look you want to make it. You can have a easy to see dashboard for you. So in here it says like I have a database, remote database name, and I have two tables being stretched. They both are outbound. The local data that resides in local, one of my table is 0, and I had another table which had about 60,300 records. After stretching, I only have 47,000 records in local. Then it says what is the size of the database that I have. Then this shows how many data have been moved to cloud. So I'll show you a live demo on that. So let's take a look at this demo again. All right. So like I said, the first 3 steps took less than 30 seconds. The next 2 steps took about 2.5 minutes. So for now, it has completed. So all I'm going to do is click on close, or you also have option to see logs. Just in case if for any reason it has failed, all you can do is to click on this log file, and you can simply go to Control F and say failed and search for it. It will give you the reason of why it has failed, because you don't need to keep scrolling up and down, right? But here it says how it has configured successfully. Now I'm going to close this. Once I have done, I'm going to check. What do I have to cancel? Close that. And once I have done that, I'm going to run this. You remember I tried to run that earlier with live query statistics enabled, and I'm going to do that right now again. Do you see that new things? Remote query has come now, and when I executed that, you saw it was trying to stream the data from cloud, the movements. But I'll show you the movement with huge number of data later. I'm going to remove the live query statistics. Now I have enabled the stretch database, and I'm going to see the status of it. The first option what I have is remote data archive databases, to check if any databases have been remote archived. Yes, it says RDA stretch. So let me get the zoom. So is it much more clear? So we have RDA stretch DB demo, and it says that's the data source ID and all of the options. The second one is data archive tables, and here it says the remote table name is factory seller sales core. That was my local table name. Then it automatically generated a Git name, and it created the table. The next column is filter predicate. When it says null, that means the whole table has been moved. If it gives any message on the filter predicate, that means the whole table of that table, you have only moved certain data based on your filter criteria. And on the next one, I have the migration status. With this migration status, all I'm trying to see is how many data have been moved in last few hours. So here I can see that's today's time, sorry. And it says 10:55, that's my UK time probably. And I'm trying to scroll down to see the number of records that I have. So I have moved 5 records. I mean, Stretch Database has moved that at that time. After moving that 5 records, there are no other data movements because no changes in that particular table. But you can see it by simply inserting more data into the same cold table. So now it says 6 rows affected. And what happened to my migration status? It hasn't done anything. It is not going to take too much of your I/O. It will see the idle time, and also, like I said, it's going to move the data to your local stage place, and then it's going to move to remote. So if I keep executing this based on the data connection speed, it's going to show up 6 somewhere here.
It shows the local stage.
Yep, I have a demo for that one too. So now you can see the 6 has appeared, all right? So I just simply inserted 6 more records. Automatically, when the data is inserted in the local table, it has moved them all together. Now it's time to check whether the data really resides in local and remote. So I have these factories that are cold, and in mode I have local only and also remote only. When I execute that, it's going to check for that particular table cold, local how many records I have, and in remote how many records I have, what is the data size it has occupied. So for the cold, I have 0 records. So for the local cold table, I have no data. It has reserved and data size, index size, and unused. The data, we first moved 5 records, then I moved 6 more records, so altogether we now have 11 records in remote. It has reserved 288, data size, index size, and unused. So we can clearly see this is the data that we have moved. Okay, now let's jump on to advanced level of Stretch database. Here in the same database, I'm going to create one more table called fact internet sales, and I'm going to show you the data, what are the data that we are going to have. So I've given a simple output here. So all I have here is 2005, 6, 7, and 8, and these are the number of records that we have. Next, in this new table called Stretch FI sales, I have not created this stretch yet. So after I created that, this table did not reflect it, so I'm going to refresh it. So I got the table now. I have not enabled it, but I have an option here to see Stretch FI sales with remote data archive override is equal to local only. When I try and execute this, it is not going to let me to see, because it's saying the remote data archive is not applicable to this object because it is not Stretch enabled. So this works only for any data, any table that has been Stretch enabled. So when I execute it, simply select star from everything, it has given me 60,398 records. What I'm going to do, I'm going to simply create new Stretch enable based on the filter criteria. I'm going to click on entire table, and instead of entire table, I'm going to choose rows. I have to give a name for this function name, order key. Then I'm going to select the column order date key. If it is less than 2006-0101, which means any data before 2006 must be moved to cloud immediately. So I'm going to check and validate the query, and I'm going to hit on done, next, and that's a simple thing. This is going to be much more quicker because we already have provisioned, we already have created the Stretch database server and also the database. So this is now done, so close. If I try and execute this, will this query work now? It still says the remote data archive hint with table is not done. So let's wait for a while to see if that has enabled or not. For that, let's try and run the migration status and see if the data is moving or not. Again, this is based on the internet connection I have connected on public Wi-Fi for the Power Summit. So I do not know how many people are accessing it. I don't have any dedicated connections. So I'm just trying to rerun that again to see if the data has been moved or not. No data has been moved so far. While that's running, I can show you this query to see if that has provisioned. This is the table, data archive table. Here you can see, when I said null, the whole table has been moved, which is the fact reseller sales cold. And for the stretch FI sales, this has been done with order key. Order key is my naming convention for the function, and based on the order date key column in that table. Now I'm going to check the migration status again. Voila, now we got it. So we have 1013 records moved to remote based on the condition what we set. Just to verify again, here you can see 2005 had 1013 records. Now I'm going to run this query again to show you if the query works. In local, we have 59,000. So we had total of 60,398, of which 1013 have been moved to remote, and I have 59,000 in local. And in remote, I have 1013 records, plus I can also choose this option stage only. In stage, it is still going to show me 1013, because before moving, it's going to move all the data to the stage, then it's going to move to the remote. Well, so we have seen that. Now to verify if the data resides in local and global, I mean like in remote, you can, this is another option to see. Stretch FI sales, 59,000 records resides locally and 1013 records resides in remote. Plus you also have 3 more options to see. So again, with exec sp space used, this is out of the box SQL query. So you can see 1013 in remote, 59 in local, and altogether 6398. Now, I told you about the query mode. If you want to let anyone access that particular table, do they want to see any data, or do they want to see only local, or do they want to see local and remote? So here is the option. I'm going to simply set exec sp rda set query mode, just local only. I execute that, and I'm going to simply run the select FI sales. I got 59,000. So we had in local 59,000. I'm going to change it to disabled, which means nobody can access this table. It says cannot query the table because this operation is currently disabled for that object. The default always is local and remote, so I'm going to enable that. Once I've enabled that, and when I execute this, this is going to show me all 60,385 records down there, 398. So we have seen the query mode options too. This is also a kind of, if you have very less bandwidth, if you don't want any users to see remote data, only local, you have the option to do this. So this also plays a security part. Yes, please?
Can you do it user-based? So there are certain users that can look at data from sales?
Not for this stored procedure, but for the whole table you can set. Okay, so now we're going to test the connection. When testing the connection, I have simply RDA test connection, and it says the remote data archive connection to the server is succeeded. So this is the stretch server that has been created recently now. So I'm going to copy that. I can go to connect database engine, and this is always SQL Server authentication one. So I'm going to give my username and password, and it has created this connection, and this is the database that has been created automatically after you have enabled the stretch. When I expand this, this is going to throw an error message, but I don't get this error in when I connect to the same instance within the Visual Studio. And these are the tables that have been stretched. Okay, so you can see how this is related. No. Anything that goes into Azure, that is always the SQL database is SQL Server authentication only, unless you have a virtual machine on it. Yeah. So we have that. Now, you remember that we created a filter predicate on it. So I can go to programmability, functions, table valued functions. That's the order key I have. Now, if I want to see the ordered key here function, and based on the ordered key, if I simply run that query in my local system, it will show what are the data that is going to be moved to the cloud. That's 1013 records. So that's simple as that. Next is the deep dive 2. Here is where we're going to play with the data and reconciliation. That's going to be a bit interesting for us. Do we have time? Yes, we do. Next, I'm going to hide that. So I'm going to verify a data for the stage only where product key is equal to 322. So I'm going to execute that. So I've got 12 records and I have the customer key, various customer keys for this particular product. Now what happens if I'm going to update that in my stage data? So I'm going to update that. It's going to throw me an error. So it says cannot perform update or delete using the stage only or table if migration is not paused. While the migration is enabled, you can't update. So what we got to do is, I've got some more special queries which I can pause that, execute, connect. Then I'm going back to my query and I'm trying to re-execute that again. So it has now executed 12 rows affected. When I execute this, I can see all my customer keys are changed. Now what happens? I change some data in one column in my stage only data table. Does it going to affect the remote table? How many say yes, how many say no? Most of you yes, but no. The reconciliation process does not happen for specific column. If you're going to make changes to remote, you have to make the changes to remote directly. But if you have a batch data, which is a set of records that has been disappeared in remote, then the reconciliation process will bring the data from stage to remote. And I've shown you this example to show you whether it's going to affect in remote. So I have the same query, for remote only, execute. The data does not affect here. So the customer key is the original key what we have there. That's only a simple scenario for you to understand that. But we have a next level of things to understand. So I'm also going to make this outbound. Interesting fact on enabling a stretch database for a specific table creates a column automatically on your local stretch table. So what is that new column being created? We're going to find out here. So I'm going to scroll to the right and you can see a brand new column called batch ID with 6295777281 has been created. What is this number and what is this batch ID? So this is a reference point to your remote table. Based on this batch ID, it says it has got 1013 records and it has all got values of 1, which means in the first batch, it has updated 1013 records. Now, for our R&D, what I'm going to do, I have created this select that particular batch ID. I'm trying to identify how many records I have in remote. So it says in remote, I have one batch of which 1013 records resides in it. What I'm going to do for our change, I'm going to create a second set of batch where I'm going to update the stretch DB for the FI sales to set the order date key to 2004 October, which is less than 2006, the criteria what I said, based on this filter condition. I'm saying if any data within this date, move this to this date. So I'm just updating that. What that means is now a new data falls under 2006 filter predicate, which will be moved to the cloud. And now it says 3,885 rows have been affected. I'm going to check the migration status to see if all of these 3885 has been moved. Voila, we got it. So all 3885 has been moved, which you can see here. Now I'm going to run the same query again to see how many batch I have. So I now have first batch and second batch. Okay. Next, I'm going to make a quick third batch. I'm going to update some more to 2005 October, which again falls less than 2006. So now I have 8,320 records. I'm really glad the connection is a bit good. Okay, now I'm trying to execute that. It hasn't still affected it. I just said that the connection was good, but it is not that good. So let me try and execute again. Hey, got it. So we now have 3 different batches. Each batch has got each number of records that has been affected both in local as well as in remote. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to delete the last batch that I've created in remote only with that option. So I'm going to click on execute. It says cannot perform update or delete using remote only when migration is enabled. So I need to pause it. So I'm going to hit on pause. Then I'm going to manually delete it. And this time it is going to say 8,320 rows have been affected. So I'm going to quickly check in my remote. I have only first batch and second batch. All right. Parallelly, I'm going to check how many data I have in my stage only. In my stage, I have 3 batches. Now, see, like I said earlier, once you identify eligible data from your local database, it moves all of the data to the stage. And now it has set all the data in your stage. You deleted some data in remote. Now it is going to auto reconcile from your local data, from your stage data to the remote data. We're going to find out now. If it does not do it, you can manually use the reconcile option. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to check that again for my remote only to see if any changes been affected. Remember, I paused it, so I also have to remember to make it outbound. So I'm going back there, execute that again. This is going to take a bit while because it's going to reconcile the batch. While doing that, I'm going to check the migration status. So 8,320 have been done a few minutes ago, but that was the first time when we brought the third batch. And I'm going to check once again. If not, I'm going to manually check that. See, I have not done it. It says cannot query the table because data reconciliation is in progress. I have not done it manually, so automatically it has identified there is a difference between the stage data and the remote data, and the third batch is now getting reconciled to remote automatically, which makes all of our life much easier. Yes?
My understanding, so it goes from your primary table, goes into a stage table.
Yep.
At this point it eventually moves to the cloud.
Yep.
My question is then at what point does it actually get removed from your stage?
It moves based on your
No, completely, because I don't want to keep 2 copies of it. I don't want to keep it in the cloud and on premises. When does it get removed from stage?
it gets removed after 8 hours. The duration of that one is minimum 8 hours. Yeah. And now let me try and re-execute the same query again in remote to see if the third batch has been reconciled. Hey, we got the third batch now in cloud. So that's a good one. Now I'm going to show you one more quick demo on reconciling a column. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to my remote server. I'm going to set new query and I'm going to copy that. I'm going to run that here. Remember, this DBO stretch git file has been created earlier when I ran it, and now it is totally going to be different. So I'm going to remove that, and that's my stretch FI sales actual table name now, and I'm going to copy that and delete and paste that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to change the connection to the database, stretch database. I'm going to alter the table, drop 2 columns, customer PO number and freight. Before removing, let me see if the columns exist or not. I've got customer PO number. Do you see it? I've got the freight here and I've got the customer PO number. And at the last, I have my batch ID. So now I'm going to execute that. That's done. And I'm going to refresh it to see my freight and customer PO number has disappeared. So now you have accidentally removed 2 columns from your remote table. This does not match your local table now. All right. So what do? Let's go back to that and let's try and check if that's going to reconcile automatically. It is not. The last column is still batch ID. I don't see anything PO number and freight. Refresh again. It's not happening. So this one took some time, so I'm going to manually reconcile here. Execute. And while this is happening, I can see the schema update status here. Do you see here? Once I have manually started that, the task type is reconcile column, and the status of that one is succeeded. Now let's go back to these columns and hit on refresh to see freed and customer PO number has reappeared in remote table. That is a very good sign, but there is a catch on it. I'm going to see what are the data that exist on this only for this session, and I can see the columns are available, but data is lost. Unfortunately, you will lose your data. It will only try and reconcile the columns, it will only try and reconcile the batch, but not a specific column or specific data, all right? And that is a drawback again. So that's a good point what we have seen there. And to list all RDA system stored procedures, that's a simple query for you to see. So you have a dozen of system stored procedures that comes out of the box for you to play with your stored procedures with stretch database. So that's with the A04, that's done. Then at last I have backup database, backup and restore. So I also have one more. Yeah?
So, even if you have that data in your stage table, it's still not going to reconcile it?
No, it won't reconcile. The reconciling concept is only to reconcile the batch by batch. Even if you have deleted one record or two records, it will still not reconcile it. It will say the batch number 3 still exists in remote. So for that reason, it won't reconcile. Yes?
If I drop the column in the local table, so this is automatically drop the column in the select table.
I'm sorry, I couldn't catch you.
If I drop the column in the local table,
Okay.
one column something, it automatically drop the column in the select table.
If you're going to drop the column in your local table, you're asking whether will it be reconciled to the remote? It will be reconciled, but provided you have the clear connection on it. But there is ifs and buts. I'm trying to close the other demos also. I'll catch up with you after this. Yeah. So I'm going to be quick on these ones. So I also have one more database called StretchDB Backup, which is stretch enabled. And with that, I'm trying to check. I'm going to execute that against DB Backup, execute, to see how many records I have in this backup database. I have 5 records, so that's going to be much quicker for us. So I'm going to take a full backup and a tail log backup, and then I'm going to restore it. Once I have done, I'm going to try and see if my data still is accessible after restoring. Come on, you can do it. It's still happening. That's again based on the net connection speed what we have. I'll open the other one in the meantime. Okay, here it says named pipes provider could not open a connection with SQL Server. So this is a problem with my local management studio and the thing, so I have to close and reopen it, then that's going to work hopefully. So I'm going to close and say no, and I'm going to reopen that again. That is much more quicker. Good. And this one I'm trying to execute against the backup database. I have restored, and now I'm going to check the connection exists or not. That's a remote only. Plus, let me open the other one. So the other one is the next scenario where in this one I can access after restoring it immediately because I'm restoring to the same database. Whereas for the other one, what I have here is I'm going to take a full backup and the tail log backup. Then I'm going to create a new database called DB Backup New. So I have a database called DB Backup. Then I'm going to create a new database called DB Backup New. I still get this error message. I'm going to ignore that for now. Let me quickly run this. execute. If this doesn't work, then I have to do this via the wizard. So it succeeded, that is good. Now I'm going to refresh that. So I can see now stretch db backup underscore new, and new database has been created, and you can see the icons. Any icons that shows like that is stretch enabled. So you have the database, then you have the cloud, then you have the arrow mark, then that means it's moved to the remote. Now I'm going to try and run this query. Sorry, not that one, that's the first one. And while that's running, you have the option to deauthorize the DB, a simple exec sp rda deauthorize. Then you're going to reauthorize it here. But while reauthorizing, you need to give the right stretch database server name. How do you get it? You're going to test the connection to get that one. Because of my connections, I'm getting things failure here, so that's not happening. Let me try and test the connection. Also, I have the option, I connected to that last, so I'm going to connect via the last connection. Oh, this is to do with my previous one, but this is a DB backup new connection, what we have created right now. So that's a test connection on that one. So we are also running out of time. So that's the test connection that you would do. And based on the connections that we copy pasted to connect to the remote server, we are then going to copy paste that here and simply reauthorize it. And after that, once you execute this remote archive, override with remote only hint, you're going to get the data. So which is exactly the same as that scenario what we saw earlier. But I'd like to show you quickly on my Power BI app. So for this StretchDB demo, I can go to tasks, stretch, and monitor. So this is the screenshot what I showed you earlier, and this is how it looks. It's refreshing to see the data connections on it. Now you can see two tables have been enabled, and I have outbound, and it gives me the information on it. Or I have option here, I can go to my app, Power BI, and refresh the dashboard tiles. And all you can see is the remote database name, and the status is outbound, and total number of records residing locally is 0. For the stretch FI sales, it is still outbound. Local records is 47190. That's the space used. And here for factory seller sales code, we first moved 5, then 6, so altogether 11. And for the FI sales, we have 52,000 records moved into the cloud, and this shows the data activity. At this time, it has moved 3,885, 8320, and again it reconciled automatically to this place. So that's again 8,320. How do you do it? You simply would use the stretch dashboard connection that I've created. How many of you played with your Power BI? Just one. So how do you easily create these? One is I have created the connections and queries in here. So I'll open that quickly for you to see what I have done here. Unfortunately, I have connections problem. Okay, so that seems to be working now. So these are what I have created, and I've got my queries down here. When I go to edit queries, I can see the source, how I have created that. This is the query that I can run in my T-SQL, in my management studio, and that is visible there. Once that is there, all I'm going to do is I'm going to access that in my Power BI portal, and I have published it, and I've got all of these. If I need it, I'm just going to say pin it, it's going to ask me where to pin it. So I've created a new dashboard Power Summit 2016, the date of 1, and this is where it is. And if at all you need to resize it, you can simply quickly resize this. That's it. Drag and drop, a simple Power BI. This is going to make your dashboards look much easier. As simple as that. Yes, question? Yep.
How does doing a point-in-time recovery on a primary database affect
The data that has been moved to the cloud? So you have your portal azure.com. And once you have created a storage database, Microsoft takes backups of it automatically. You have options to go to your databases and see what is the point-in-time recovery that you have. You can do it on your portal. I'm going to my SQL databases. So that's in West Europe. So let me go for the West Europe actually, because that's been there for a while. So it should have taken a snapshot, hopefully. So here you have your restore option. And you can see the database name there. So the oldest restore point that you have as of now is that time. Or if you have taken, I created these backups just recently now, these databases now, right? So if you have created earlier, I can go for that specific date and then you can see what is the point in time recovery that you have. Okay? No worries, you're welcome. So a quick summary. So we have seen so far, data migration assistant, stretch, identifying the data in local, remote, as well as in the stage. You have seen the migration status, how do you archive tables and databases. You have seen the query mode, how you have some sort of security on that one. Testing the connections, monitoring with SSMS and also the Power BI, backup and restore. We have seen the demo. And the session evaluations, like I said earlier, we have 3 options to do the evaluations. So via Power Summit or your app or via the QR code. And if you have any other questions, I'm available after these sessions. Thank you so much for your time.